Warning! Some images could disturb the sensitivity of the viewers.
We heard it, it messed us up. Not because it was gory, though yeah, it absolutely was, but because it wasn't a movie. It actually happened. Ed didn't come out of the woods with a chainsaw, but he might as well have. This quiet, lonely guy from Plainfield, Wisconsin looked harmless on the outside, a bit shy, a bit odd, but what cops found inside his farmhouse in 1957 shook the world.
Welcome back, my dear followers, or welcome if it's the first time that you're watching my YouTube channel, My Paranormal and Mystery TV. I warn you since now, I'm going to make you watch Uncensored, real, extreme, horrific, disturbing photos and videos about Ed Gein. Ed Gein, who inspired 3 films. Because his biography that I tell you in brief, Ed Gein was the direct inspiration for 3 films, for the creation of the character of Norman Bates in Psycho, released in 1960 by Alfred Hitchcock. Then we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in which Leatherface appears from the first time, and Leatherface for the modus operandi in which he mutilated, he skinned his victims, is closer to Ed Gein, even if the mother of Norman Bates, was really similar to the one of Ed Gein. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 1974 by Tobe Hooper, and then the inspiration for the character of Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs, released in 1991 by Jonathan Demme. Ed Gein, real name Edward Theodore Gein, everybody called him Ed, and then they rebaptized him. The Butcher of Plainfield was born on August 27th, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. It's for sure that he murdered, slaughtered, and desecrated 2 women, but he was suspected of other 7 victims, because these people were in Plainfield and they disappeared. They are still missing people, included his brother Harry G. Gein. His body was found dead, but in suspicious circumstances. So Ed Gein was born in La Crosse. His mother, and let me tell you, the mother of evil, was Augusta T. Lerck, and his father was George P. Gein. His father was violent, he was an alcoholic, he did odd jobs. Then he moved with his family in the farm of Plainfield, Augusta Gein was a Christian religious fanatic. So she raised her two sons almost in isolation. She only allowed them to go to school and immediately to return home. They couldn't have friends, a social normal life, a little spare time. No, only school and work at the farm. And then Augusta taught his sons to despise all the women. To have sex with them was a deadly sin. All of the women except her were dirty, were a deception of the devil. And every day when they returned home from school, she read them the Bible. She was obsessed with the Bible. And she saw everything, even the most natural and innocent things, as mortal sins. And if they were corrupted by women, they deserved the divine punishment and the eternal damnation in hell. So once she surprised Ed Gein masturbating in the bathroom. So she cut his genitals, calling them the curse of the men, and she punished him with boiling water. When Ed Gein was 21 and also his brother, she made them promise to her to remain virgin for the rest of their lives. Then the father died in 1940. And then in 1944, a fire broke out in the farm. Only Ed Gein survived, and he told the police, "I'm not able to find my brother anymore because his brother, during that period, he started to criticize their mother, saying that she was completely mad, she was insane, and he wanted to go away from the farm and to be with a divorced woman with 2 children. So easily, his first victim was his brother. A suspicious death, because they found traces of asphyxiation and a hit to his head, who seemed given with a blunt object, but it was all dropped as an incident. But only 1 year later, in 1945, Augusta died from a stroke. So it was a complete shock for Gein, who he wasn't like his brother. He was completely manipulated by his mother. So he decided to barred all the rooms of his mother in the farm, like Norman Bates in Psycho. His two victims for sure are Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden. When Bernice Warden, who had a star, disappeared, then immediately the son alarmed the police. The murder happened on November the 16th, 1957, and the following day the police arrested Ed Gein. And when they went to the farm to see if there was the corpse of if Bernice Warden was still alive, they found something they couldn't imagine in a real life, because it wasn't a horror movie. And what they found is creepier and creepier than the movies, because they found Bernice Warden hanging by the ankles, cut open from vagina, slaughtered as a deer, and decapitated. In a few minutes I'm going to make you watch all these horror photos and videos uncensored. So since now you know that I'm going to make you watch the corpse of this poor victim hanged like an animal, and also her head decapitated, and much more. What the police found: 20 noses, human bones, true skulls on the header of Ed Gein's bed, a corset made with human skin, a thorax skinned from shoulder to waist, a basket made with human skin, a mask skinning the face of Mary Hogan in a paper bag. Then they found the head, and I'm going to make you watch all these horrific items. Do you understand me? I'm going to make you watch also the head of Bernice Warden decapitated on a kind of table. Then 9 vulvas in a shoebox, leggings made with human skin, 2 vulvas of adolescent girls, human nipples, 10 heads of women as decorations in his bedroom. Tapestry, a great lamp, a chair made with human skin and human bones. Then skull caps worked to make them balls, a human heart, 2 human lips to decorate his windows, a drum made of human skin, human femurs to make the legs of a table, 9 masks made skinning human faces. So in this case, it was the real Leatherface. Then he was accused of these crimes: profanation of cemeteries, coffins, robbing of corpses, mutilations, necrophilia that he denied, desecration of corpses. He used the human parts to build also some home furnishing tools. And he denied necrophilia because he stated that the stink of the corpses, he wasn't able to have sex with dead bodies because there was too much stink. But he admitted to have sexual pleasure for the corpses he had mutilated. And think about that in 1968, at trial, he was considered, I'm really shocked. They said that he suffered from mental infirmity, and so he didn't go to a normal prison and to the death penalty. And he was imprisoned in a psychiatric hospital where he died on July the 26th in 1984 at 77 from a lung cancer. And now, I don't waste your time anymore. I warn you since now. Have you understood what I'm going to make you watch? Because this is real extreme horror. Okay, let's watch them. I've decided to start with, if I can call them, softer horror videos to arrive to the most horrific, extreme, revolting, disturbing videos. Warning! Some images could disturb the sensitivity of the viewers.
The iconic and menacing villain from Tobe Hooper's classic horror movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Leatherface is a man of a few words, but his presence on the screen is so menacing, so iconic that it is hard not to feel a chill running down your spine whenever you see him. And
these are really strong images, and then I will make you see them better. This is some of the horrific items found in the house of horror of Ed Gein. As you may see, gloves made with human skin, a part of a victim decapitated, hanged. And as you may see, This was, then I make you see better, the poor head of Bernie's warden, decapitated and then put on a table to be a decoration on the wall. And these are other horrific items in the house of real horror.
Jedediah is known as Leatherface because he wears a mask made of human flesh. Wielding his weapon of choice, a chainsaw, and wearing the bloodied apron, Leatherface is extremely scary to look at.
Leatherface!
Personality and looks change quite a bit. The one thing that remains common in all the portrayals, except the 2017 film, is his lack of words. The man just moves around menacingly, sometimes making noises, but not at all many words. In the original film, Jedediah had 4 family members: Grandpa, Chop Top, Drayton Sawyer, and Nubbins. This too changes as you go down the franchise, and the continuity of the series gets further complicated. Throughout all of the films, it is very evident that Leatherface is not someone who can be killed. Not that he is immortal or something, he is just very resilient, like most villains are. The only time we see him die on screen is in part 2, where Drayton drops a bomb to kill an attacking lefty, but ends up taking down Leatherface and Grandpa with him. In the first film, we follow Sally Hardesty and her brother Franklin, who decide to travel to rural Texas where their grandfather is buried, after learning that several grave sites were desecrated and the bodies were taken out. With them, 3 of their friends decided to tag along. They were Jerry, Pam, and Kirk. Pam and Kirk are a couple, and Jerry was Sally's boo. Luckily, the gravesite was not desecrated, and with that sigh of relief, the youngsters decided that since they were in the locality, they might as well visit Sally's old home. On their way to the home,
the group reaches
the abandoned house, and this is where things end up going south. On checking out the sound of a gas generator nearby, the group discovers a large farmhouse just littered with abandoned vehicles around it. On the porch, Kirk finds a human tooth, and like a fool, he decides to enter the house to check out some strange animal noises. And this is when we meet the star of our video, Leatherface. Walking into the frame with his bloodied apron, leather mask, and a giant sledgehammer, Leatherface smashes through Kirk, giving us the most memorable villain entrance from the 1970s. After that, as you can guess, one by one, they all fall victim to Leatherface and his family. Pam quickly joins.
The videos I've just made you watch were from the first movie with Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 1974, and here we have Gein, the real monster.
The narration of this movie is Ed Gein, a serial killer from the 1950s whose crimes were so heinous, so grotesque, that he left the entire world shocked. Ed Gein, the body snatcher of Wisconsin, most commonly called the Plainfield Ghoul, had a long history of dressing up in feminine clothes and mutilating corpses. As a matter of fact, he was so obsessed with his mother that even after her death, Ed preserved her body in a room in pristine condition, wanting to crawl into her skin. He had desecrated several graves, and using those decaying bodies, he would make mementos, like masks and trinkets, which is obviously a clear inspiration for Jedediah's iconic mask. But why did he do it? Well, that story is a bit sad. See, Ed was born into a very religious family. His father George was abusive, and his mother Augusta was extremely religious and ensured Eddie and his brother Henry knew about God, sex, and the sin of lust. She kind of warned them on a daily basis about how they should stay away from women because they would surely drag them to hell. As George was an alcoholic, Augusta deemed him worthless. When she saved up enough money from her grocery business in La Crosse, she moved the entire family to Plainfield. Eddie was a bit introverted and was often ignored by everyone in school. His demeanor was extremely feminine in comparison to the boys of his age, and whenever Eddie tried to make friends, his mother would scold him for it. This pushed Eddie into the dark corners, and he became friends with those dark thoughts. The only woman in his life was his mother, and he worshipped her completely. He was not shy of throwing hands or tantrums if his brother criticized their mother even the slightest bit. In May of 1944, the boys were playing around a bushfire. The Eventually, they split their ways and Eddie returns home. When Henry did not return for a while, the police were called and somehow Eddie managed to lead the investigators straight to Henry, who lay in an untouched area with bruises on his head. As Eddie was pretty shy and looked harmless, he was dismissed as a suspect. But we are all thinking the same thing, right? He probably did it. Now, a year later, in 1945, his mother passed away from health issues, and Eddie became even more distraught. His father had passed away 5 years ago, and now Eddie was all alone. After being alone for so long, craving a woman like his mother, Eddie started doing all the messed up things we know him for. And yes, he did wear human skin as a mask. Unlike Leatherface, who wore it to hide his skin condition, Gein did it to be a woman. In fact, he even wore his handmade vest with breasts and female genitalia on top of his body to complete the look. Now you might wonder, what about the chainsaw? Did Ed Gein murder people with a chainsaw? Is that why Leatherface uses that? Well, the inspiration for that comes directly from Tobe Hooper himself. While out on a shopping spree for Christmas, Tobe noticed a rack of chainsaws while being pushed and shoved around by this Christmas crowd. At that moment, the whole thought of plowing through the crowd using a chainsaw came into his head, and with the weapon of the killer picked out, it did not take him long to figure out the rest of the story.
I want to stress that only a girl survives in the first movie of the saga. When the police entered Ed Gein's farm,
Skulls, along with furniture, clothes, and even a suit made of human skin and body parts. Gein told them that he went ahead and dug the bodies of recently dead women because he missed his mother. In total, the police found the remains of 10 women in his home. But, as he did not murder those women, Gein was only convicted of the murder of Bernice and Mary Hogan, another local woman. On the stand, Gein was declared mentally unfit, and he was sent to the state hospital in Wisconsin. A lot of people actually ended up in his house out of curiosity, and eventually it was burned in 1958 by an arsonist. 10 years later, in 1968, Gein was considered to be sane enough to stand trial, and there he was found guilty and spent his entire life in a state facility. On the 26th of July, 1984, Edward Thomas Gein breathed his last in the Mendota Mental Health Institute after suffering a respiratory failure due to lung cancer. Several souvenir seekers chipped pieces of his gravestone from the Plainfield Cemetery, and in 2000, his headstone was stolen for good. The authorities were able to recover the headstone in 2001 from an area adjacent to Seattle, Washington, and it was then kept in the storage of the Waushara County Sheriff's Department.
it is said that Ed Gein's corpse now.
Plainfield Cemetery.
Job, but never forget what he is.
Are more characters inspired by Ed Gein? Would you be surprised to know that there are many more killers inspired by Ed Gein? Well, even if you are, he has indeed inspired quite a few. We have Norman Bates from 1960's Psycho, who is loosely based on Ed Gein. Robert Bloch wrote Norman Bates using Ed Gein as his inspiration, and with Alfred Hitchcock's adaptation, we all got to see him shine. Main traits that both of them share in their introverted, shy nature and desire for sex, but refusing it at the same time because of their domineering and religious mothers. And of course, the strange attachment to the mothers themselves as well. Then, in 1991, we had The Silence of the Lambs, where we got Buffalo Bill, who resembled Ed Gein the most.
But who was really Ed Gein?
Born on August 27th in 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and right from the start, life didn't hand him anything close to normal. His father, George Gein, was a drunk who could barely hold down a job or a conversation. He believed that everyone outside their walls, especially women, were filthy, morally rotten. Everyone except her, of course. No friends, no neighbors dropping by, no school dances or summer baseball. Augusta didn't allow any of it. The only thing that echoed in Ed's ears was his mommy's rants about sins and corruption.
1944.
It broke out near their farm. Both brothers went to put it out, but only Ed came back. When police showed up, Ed said Henry had gone missing, and he led them straight to the body, lying dead on the scorched ground. The odd thing was, Henry's body was found under suspicious circumstances. Bruises on his head, no smoke in his lungs. While the official cause of death was an accidental fire, the locals had their doubts. Whispers of foul play floated around. Still, nobody pushed too hard. Nothing was ever proven, but the timing spoke volumes. Then, in 1945, Augusta died after a stroke. In 1957, that's the day Plainfield, Wisconsin stopped being just another quiet town. Bernice Warden, who ran the local hardware store, went missing. Her store was open, the register gone, her truck was gone as well, and streaks of blood trailed across the floor. The final receipt left behind had one name, Ed Gein. Sheriff's deputies didn't waste time. They headed out to Ed's farm on the edge of town. What they expected was a suspect. What they found was a real-life house of horrors. When police searched his farmhouse, they uncovered a scene straight out of a nightmare.
Ed Gein confessed.
Killing Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden.
These are some horror items made with human skin.
The craftsmanship and the time it must have taken just didn't add up. Cops were convinced there was more, but Ed didn't talk beyond those two names. He didn't need to. The house said enough. The media descended on Plainfield, turning it into a circus of reporters and gawkers. For the folks in Plainfield, it hit them like a wrecking ball, out of nowhere. People refused to believe it at first. The quiet handyman, the babysitter, the man who mowed their lawns, the man who could live next door to you. It all traced back to Ed Gein. Later, in 1974, Tobe Hooper brought the horror genre something that feels even more animalistic. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Unlike Psycho, this wasn't about subtlety at all. This was raw terror. Assuming you've seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because, well, everyone and their aunt has, you know this chainsaw-wielding maniac doesn't talk much and wears masks made out of human skin. That was pulled straight from Gein's book of taxidermy. Leatherface also has a weird relationship with identity. In some versions of the story, he wears women's clothes as a part of his skin costume, an echo of Gein's attempt to transform himself into a version of his dead mom. That idea of a man trapped in grief trying to wear someone else's skin to fill a hole in his soul ended up becoming the backbone of Leatherface's character. The low IQ, the silence, a loner obsessed with skin, it's all there if you look. And then there's
trial.
That just didn't happen. When doctors evaluated him later that year, they called it. Gein was legally insane. He didn't understand the charges against him, couldn't assist in his own defense, and lived in his own broken version of reality. So, instead of a courtroom, he was sent to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. That's where he stayed for the next 10 years. In 1968, after years of observation and treatment, the system decided Gein was stable enough to face trial, and so they brought him back. But prosecutors didn't charge him with everything. They knew about Mary Hogan, the tavern owner who vanished in 1954. They even found her head on his property, but they focused the case entirely on Bernice Warden, the hardware store owner whose murder finally exposed him. Why only one murder? Simple. Warden's case had airtight evidence. Trying Ed for both killings would have taken longer and wouldn't have changed the end result. The police had what they needed, so the trial began. It didn't last long. Ed was found guilty of killing Bernice Warden. No debate there. He had already confessed. The physical evidence was overwhelming, but right after the guilty verdict, he was once again declared legally insane, this time at the time of the crime. That meant no prison sentence, so instead of prison, Ed went right back into psychiatric care, this time to Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin, where he lived until his death in 1984. He spent the rest of his life in confinement, occasionally drawing, occasionally speaking, but never showing much remorse or clarity. But Ed Gein's farmhouse still stood. It was soon to be appraised, and his assets were supposed to be auctioned off. It had become a magnet for the curious and the sick. Surprisingly, one morning, the house was destroyed by a large fire. Arson was suspected, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. Ed Gein's sick playhouse went up in smoke. His car, the one he used to haul...
And now I will make you watch how Plainfield and the real places where these horrific crimes happened are now. Ed Gein.
Edward Gein. This guy was pure evil. Now this goes back to 1957, and this guy was known up here, basically all over the country and the world in the end, as the Butcher of Plainfield, or as I say today, Leatherface. This guy, this Ed Gein guy, was a body snatcher and also a murderer. And it was in the fall of 1957, while all the men were out deer hunting, that he committed his final act. And it was then that the authorities discovered the most gruesome scene that they could have ever imagined. It was within his boarded-up farmhouse, which was located just ahead here, that we're heading to, where the exhumed body parts of between 20 to 40 corpses of local women that were stolen from nearby graveyards were found, and you'll see, we'll talk about it, they were fashioned, these bodies were fashioned into trophies and keepsakes and from their bones and skin. But of course that wasn't enough. Then he had to start committing murders.
This was the real Augusta, the mother of Ed Gein and his brother.
Her biggest trait was that is known as she just hated women. She thought all women were whores, and she taught her two boys all about what she thought of women, along with all her other oddities. And it's kind of reminiscent of the movie Psycho, especially.
This is the place where he caught his last victim, Bernice Warden.
Fateful day that Edward Gein came to town, as he did so often, to the hardware store, and here it is. It's right here. I almost passed it right up. And he, this is it. This is where he had murdered his last victim, a woman by the name of Bernice Warden.
And here we are at the real cemetery where Augusta, his father, his brother are buried, and also it is said Ed Gein, even after the profanation of his gravestone.
All alone in that house. He boarded up all the windows. He kept his mother's room exactly as it was. It was a time capsule.
Ed Gein didn't just dig
up any body. He would learn of a funeral. And there was one story of a woman that he fancied. And she died. And literally the day after the funeral, he came here at night after she was buried, fresh, and dug her up. And after he dug her up, he placed her body, he brought her body back to the home and basically dissected her.
However, when he couldn't find bodies in this cemetery...
He went to other cemeteries too, by the way, in central Wisconsin here. But when he ran out of bodies, he actually went to this roadhouse and shot and killed a woman named Mary Hogan. Mary Hogan was a bawdy, heavy-set, very outgoing, big personality. She would tell dirty jokes, and he went in there at the right time. And usually this stuff would happen in fall when he'd do this stuff. And shot and killed her. That was the first. And brought her back and took her apart.
And now, pay attention, really warning, because we are getting close to some of the most horrific real photos in this documentary. And the next victim was Bernice Warden.
And it was Bernice who... what happened was he, like I said, he went in the store and killed her, dragged her body out. But it was her son, after deer hunting, came back, and everybody was like, why is the hardware store closed? And finally her son went in there, and he saw the blood on the floor, and the place was a mess. And then he looked in the accounts book, and it said, Eddie Gein, antifreeze. So he immediately went to the sheriff and said, hey, we got to go check it out.
The sheriff entered the house and suddenly
the light on it, and it was Bernice's body hung, as I had described it, upside down, slit from gut to chest.
here we are at the first horrific photos uncensored. This is the body of Bernice Warden, as you may see, upside down and slaughtered like a deer after hunting. It's really something really disturbing, more than horrific. And here she was decapitated. She was completely open from her vagina to her chest and slaughtered.
Like a deer being gutted. Decapitated. They found her head in the house.
This is the head of Bernice Warden. Ed Gein was ready to hang it up on the wall as a painting, a decoration, something really creepy when the police found her head on this kind of table, and all these photos are real and uncensored.
It was just a absolute gruesome scene. Of course, after that, they just went to the house and they just started opening everything up.
Here at the tomb of George.
George died in 1940. The infamous mother, Augusta, who probably was responsible for all this in her teaching ways. This is where Edward is. There's no gravestone. The gravestone was stolen. First it was chipped away, which, again, you look at this. Here's Mother. She's kind of infamous. And you can just see where people have selfishly desecrated this monument, chipping away.
Be strong and with a strong stomach. I'm going to make you watch the real creepy photos.
Mutilations that he did. And again, there were other people killed, men, women missing, 2 15-year-olds they think he killed and murdered that were never found. One of the things they found was a head in a box.
This head in a box was the head of Mary Hogan. You can see it was in decomposition. I don't dare to think about what the policemen felt when they discovered this real house of horror.
It was Mary Hogan. They found human skin gloves. They found a belt of female nipples.
Look, this is a belt made with human female nipples. Oh my gosh.
Couldn't even imagine that. A box of vulvas or vaginas. They found a lamp that had, the lamp cord had lips, a pair of human lips that were attached to the string. You pull down on the human lips. They found 9 facial skin masks. Again, one of them was.
This is another horrific photo, real photo, unfortunately. It did at least 9 masks with human skin from women. Look, it's not a horror movie. This is real horror. How can a human being do such more the horrific, unimaginable horrors? Real.
It's Mary Hogan. And he would wear these. I think that's where the inspiration for the Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre came. He would wear these things at night with this corset that he made from a woman, literally skinning.
This is one. This photo is really one of the most disturbing, because this woman was made with several pieces of other victims. The head had a face, but the chest was of another victim. As you may see, the belt. How is it possible? Because remember that real serial killers are worse, are really worse and worse than fiction.
From the shoulders to the stomach, like a chest plate with straps. And he actually also carved skin from the legs and made legs. And he would put this all out and then put it on and go outside and, who knows, dance in the moonlight. They found skulls that were, some of which they found skulls on bedposts. Some of the skulls were cut laterally.
This is one of the real skulls of his victim or corpses stolen from several cemeteries. He worked these skulls, he removed the brain and used this human skull as a ball. He did more balls. It's really something incredible.
Used as soup bowls. Of course, they found lampshades and furniture. They found a chair with human skin, lampshade.
This was one of the rooms in which he kept human organs. It's something incredible because the sentence excluded cannibalism, but what the hell he did with organs, also in soup or in the fridge. This is really the extreme horrific. He was found guilty.
Guilty but insane. So he spent the rest of his life till he was 77. He died of cancer in the mental ward of the prison. Actually, the last prison he was in was a minimum security, no bars, no fences. He was said to be.
Now you can ask me, what else? Is there other horror, other shocking, horrific, extreme horrific videos and photos to watch? The answer is yes. So I go on.
Childhood and eventually descended into madness, leaving a horrific trail of crime behind. Born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, in 1906, Ed's upbringing was defined by isolation, abuse, and a strict religious environment. Gein's mother, Augusta Gein, instilled a profound hatred of women in her sons, telling them they were sinful temptresses. She told her sons that sex was evil, and women were instruments of the devil. The God-fearing woman ruled her household with an iron fist. Her twisted teachings left deep psychological scars on Ed. The family had little contact with the outside world. Moreover, the patriarch of the family, George Gein, was a violent alcoholic who failed to provide for his family and was never emotionally available for his children. Augusta despised her husband, but her fanatical beliefs from the Bible stopped her from leaving him. So she did everything to make Ed different. He had been indoctrinated into believing males were weak and thought about becoming a powerful female like his mother and remaining a virgin to avoid eternal damnation. After George's death in 1940, Gein became even more dependent on his mother. But Henry, Ed's elder brother, started dating a divorced woman who had 2 children. He wanted to move in with her and began criticizing his own overbearing mother's hold over his younger brother. In 1944, Henry died under mysterious circumstances. The brothers were burning brush on the farm and the blaze went out of control. Ed reported to the local police that he had lost sight of his brother in the inferno. But the investigation revealed Henry had suffered injuries to his head before his death. However, it was ruled as an accident. By 1945, Ed remained the sole surviving member in their large, decrepit farmhouse after his mother's death due to a stroke. This is where his mental state truly began to unravel. Ed sealed off the rooms his mother used, preserving them like a shrine. He also started fixating on death, corpses, and the female body. He dug up his mother and removed her head, which he took home to shrink, just as he had read about in his books. After this, Gein began scouting recent obituaries of women his mother's age and returned to the cemetery to rob their recently buried bodies. Between 1947 and 1952, he robbed graves and exhumed bodies from local cemeteries. He also mutilated the remains of the dead and used the parts to craft a macabre assortment of objects. When authorities finally searched his home in 1957, they discovered a collection that was both shocking and revolting. There were skulls mounted on bedposts, bowls made from human skulls, lampshades, and chairs upholstered in human skin. The officers also found a pair of leggings, fashioned from the skin from.
These are other horrific items made with human skin of his victims or corpses stolen from graveyards. Look! The bones were decoration or used to make chairs, instruments, and much more like lampshades. It's really horrific.
And chairs upholstered in human skin. The officers also found a pair of leggings, fashioned from the skin from human legs, and a vest made of a woman's torso.
What I told you before, this torso made with parts of different human bodies. Look, another skull that used as bowls, maybe to drink a cup of tea. It's really more unimaginable, really.
So with breasts. In addition to all this, there was a grotesque woman suit made from the skin of his victims. The House of Horrors was like a museum of Gein's perverted attempt at recreating his dead mother by wearing the skin of other women. The full horror of Ed Gein's actions came to light when the police connected him to the murders of two local women, Mary Hogan, a tavern owner, and Bernice Worden, a hardware store owner. Worden's decapitated and mutilated body was found hanging in Gein's shed. When the cops raided Gein's farmhouse, they discovered the remains of at least 15 women. They also found male bones and a gold tooth buried, and the sexual organs of young girls. However,
all these photos I'm showing you, unfortunately, are all real. And on the right, you can see the end of Bernice Worden, slaughtered like a deer and hung like a deer, deprived of her dignity. It's something that it's unimaginable. And look on the left. These are all the masks done with human skin of the victims. Look. He had so many masks that you understand that he was really the real Leatherface. And they also found sexual organs of young girls, teenager girls.
However, Ed was officially charged with only 2 murders. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he was declared legally insane.
His story!
Robbing, brutal murders, and necrophilia have inspired some of the most iconic fictional characters in cinema. Think Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Furniture covered in human skin.
Look at other items. Look, he did a picture of himself in a frame made with the human skin of his victims. Look, and in the horror was really able to build even instruments, tools for his house.
Obsessed with somehow reviving her. On November 16, 1957, the disappearance of Bernice Worden led the police to his farm. There they found human heads transformed into bowls, leather corsets, and even a complete suit that he wore in solitude. During his trial, he was declared insane and spent the rest of his life in psychiatric hospitals until his death in 1984.
When Ed Gein got arrested, he behaved like it was normal. There was nothing to hide in his wonderful farm. Look at him. Look at him. I make you see him better. He was even smiling when police arrested him after discovering the slaughter of Bernice Worden. I'm really shocked.
Meet Ed Gein, The quiet farm boy with a twisted secret.
And here you can see another horrific item made with look. This was a lampshade, and it was made with all the you can see it was from a human being. And then another face skinned by a woman. She made this lampshade with bones, pieces of bones, and also a face skinned from one of these victims. It's really something really unimaginable if it's not shown. Nobody would believe that a human being could do such more the horrific crimes if you don't see evil for what it really is.
A grave robber, murderer, and the man behind some of the most disturbing scenes in cinematic history.
This was the poor Bernice Warden, and you have just watched in all this documentary how her body was reduced. And think about that, if the Sun didn't alert police and they didn't find the House of Horror, it kept on killing. I just can't imagine how many women could end up like the poor Bernice Warden,
who was a well-known and well-loved woman who ran the local hardware store, vanished. Her son Frank, who
was the real place,
that had been in the shop the day before and mentioned coming back for an antifreeze. So the police checked the receipt.
The track I've just made you see was the track of the victim, but even the autos remind the film, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Here the police enters the House of Horrors.
It's a real-life horror show. Junk and rotten garbage covered the floor, tables and counters, making it almost impossible to walk through the house. The smell of filth and decomposition was overwhelming, and it was really difficult to imagine that someone was actually living inside of it all.
Look at these horrific balls made with a human skull.
Actually made of a human skull, with the top part being cut off. Cutlery was made of human bones. There were chairs and a waste bin upholstered with human skin. There was a lampshade standing in a corner of the room, and it was obviously made of a human face. And then the officers found a belt made entirely of nipples. When they entered the kitchen, they immediately grimaced, as sitting on the top of the counter was a bowl full of organs, with blood stain everywhere they looked.
And this is another shocking photos. A suit made with human skin. Look how he was quiet when he got arrested.
The entire town recoiled in disbelief. They knew Ed was strange, but they would have never thought that such a monster was hiding away in their small town.